Is that all right? Yeah, excellent. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, no problem. That's great stuff. Okay, so let's get started then. Okay, so hello and welcome. And I'm really glad that you are joining me on today's session. So today we're going to be looking at exploring how faith-based leadership development can actually unlock incredible potential in your team. So we're looking at faith-based leadership development, how that can unlock incredible potential within your team. So, as leaders, we're often tasked with developing teams, not just in skill, but also in character, in resilience, and also in innovation. So, that's what as leaders, we're often having to do. But by infusing kind of faith-driven values into leadership development, we can help teams actually overcome challenges and achieve remarkable success in lots of different ways. I just think that's really important. So by the end of this session, our objective is that you'll kind of leave understanding how cultivating faith-driven leaders in your organization can improve team resilience, can foster kind of innovation, and create a more engaged and ethical workforce. So that's kind of what we're looking to get from today. So as always, let's have a look. Maybe slides went. Okay, so our mission is to create a welcoming space where leaders are empowered to align their faith, their values, and ethics with their leadership. Okay, so welcome. And through this alignment, what we do is we help leaders to increase their impact, but to do that authentically and to achieve business success with integrity. So across every sphere of influence and whatever industry they happen to operate in. So welcome to today, and we're going to be looking into a number of things. So first of all, we're going to be looking at the power of faith-based leadership. So what does it really mean, and why is it so effective for actually building, strong values-aligned teams? We're going to be sharing some key strategies for faith-driven leaders. So some real practical ways to embed purpose, emotional intelligence, and servant leadership into your culture, whether that's your team culture, your organization culture, wherever you're operating from. We're going to spend a little bit of time going through a little reflective activity. So a bit like what we had at the beginning. This is going to be like an opportunity to explore how faith-driven leadership shows up in your team and where there's room to grow. We're also going to touch on the long-term impact on why. Why does building resilient, purpose-led teams, how does that set a foundation for sustainable success? And then finally, I'm going to share, how you can go a little deeper, and I'm going to tell you about the leadership impact and influence audit and how you can take the next step towards faith alignment, faith-aligned leadership, but doing that with excellence. So that's what we're going to be doing quickly today. Okay. So let's jump in then. I keep looking at my screen to see who else has come in. But anyway, here we go. So when it comes to defining faith-based leadership, it's important to stress, and I do stress this a lot, that we're not talking about, we don't mean a religious approach. It's actually about integrating core values such as integrity, compassion, service, and vision into how we lead. So that's what we're talking about here. At its core, faith-based leadership is about bringing authenticity and purpose into leadership practice. It's about guiding teams that, with a moral compass that goes beyond profits and fosters a kind of sense of a higher purpose. So it's like we're in this for a reason. There's more than just a job. There's something more that we're bringing to the party. So that's what we're talking about here when we're talking about I'm just letting somebody in, when we're talking about kind of, working together and bringing this at its core. Okay, so when it comes to the benefits of faith then, of faith-based leadership, when it comes to those benefits, studies show, and I do love statistics, so please forgive me for that, but I do love statistics and I do love making sure that there's ways in which we can really understand how all this impacts in our organizations. So studies show that faith-based organizations often have more cohesive teams, they have higher levels of employee satisfaction, and they have stronger resilience in the face of adversities. So according to a 2022 Gallup survey, 77% of employees or staff in faith-friendly workplaces report feeling valued. So that goes back to what Steph said. So they report feeling valued. And 63% state that they're likely to stay with a company due to its alignment with values. So if we're talking about wanting to kind of stop, staff hemorrhaging from our organisations, there's definitely a link to having values within an organisation. And when we're talking about resilience and innovation, when team members are led by faith-driven values, they're more likely to approach challenges with a mindset of resilience and creativity. You see, faith-based leaders have a tendency to encourage people to look beyond the immediate obstacles, to start to think more innovatively, and to trust that solutions will come through collaboration and faith. It's that whole thing about having that faith that actually all things will work together for good. Okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about. So let's just get an example. Let's use Chick-fil-A as an example. Now, Chick-fil-A, this is a US organization that's in the food industry. And what they do, they actually integrate faith-based values into its leadership model. So as a company, it actually prioritizes service, integrity, and community. That's its main focus. So even when facing public criticism or actually operational challenges, their leaders actually lean in and lean on their core mission. So when things go bad or things start to look a bit horrible, they actually lean into what is it that we're here? What is it what we're about? The result, they have resilient teams, high employees or staff retention, and a brand that's known for consistency, care, and a strong internal culture. And there's another case. There's a faith-based tech company that when it faced significant market disruption, instead of panicking, the leadership team actually focused on the greater good. They actually looked at the greater good of their mission. And they took the time to really rally the team around a real shared sense of purpose. And what they also did, they innovated by developing, a brand new product line, which then became a huge success, all because they had faith in the company's overall purpose, and that faith kept them grounded and motivated. So even in times of difficulty, just looking at that bigger mission can make a huge difference. So let's just turn our attention then to cultivating faith-based leaders in your organization. And what I want to encourage you to do, like you've already started doing, but any thoughts that you have as I'm talking, just drop them in there. Anything you agree with or don't agree with, or any questions, just drop them in there and I will pick them up. Okay, so let's look at some key strategies. So strategy number one is around align leadership development programs with faith-based principles. So look for ways to integrate faith-driven values into your existing leadership development programs, or look at enabling staff to participate in bespoke faith-based leadership development programs. Okay, I happen to know somebody who does that, but that's not about that. Okay, so but what I'm talking about is this approach actually helps to shape leaders who are not only skilled but able to deliver great results for your business, but also leaders who are also ethical and resilient. So when you integrate those kind of faith principles into leadership development, it makes a huge difference. It is important to teach core principles like servant leadership, honesty, and community building, but to do that alongside traditional business acumen like, project management, financial literacy, stewardship. So all those things are really important, but it's how can you do that together? Strategy number 2, to encourage servant leadership. So faith-based leadership actually emphasizes servant leadership, where leaders are encouraged to prioritize the well-being of their team over, over above their personal interests. Okay, okay. No, definitely. We will talk about that most definitely. But yeah, catch up on the replay and we'll drop a time to talk about that definitely. Fantastic. Okay. So thank you for that. Okay, so like I was saying, when leaders are encouraged to prioritize the well-being of their team over and above personal interest, this approach actually creates a culture of trust and collaboration. I think it goes back. Yeah, I'm your leader, therefore I will follow. Yeah, definitely. There's that whole thing, I am your leader, but I'm going to follow what you need. That's that putting other people first. And I think that goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, Steph, about that whole show people love, give them attention, give them time, and all those things. That's all part of servant leadership, and it makes a huge difference. So that is what actually creates a culture of trust and collaboration. So there's that, for instance, leaders who prioritize regular one-to-one meetings with their staff members. Just doing that consistently actually fosters stronger team relationships. It enhances communication, and again, it builds that sense of trust. And these practices actually, then when you do them consistently, lead to more engaged staff, more innovative teams, and ultimately benefits the organization as a whole. And I think that's a real plus within for business. And then finally, but not finally, we got number 3, strategy number 3, fostering emotional intelligence. There are not lots of people talk about emotional intelligence. So we're talking about leaders who are able to incorporate faith-based principles. They often excel in emotional intelligence too. So they tend to be able to understand their own emotions. And because they have that understanding, they're able to empathize with others, which again strengthens relationships and builds that whole sense of trust. Now, there was a study that was done by a company called Talent Smart, and they found that leaders with high emotional intelligence are, get this, 90% more likely to be high performers in the workplace. So leaders who have a high emotional intelligence are 90% more likely to be high performers in the workplace. I just think that's pretty interesting. So any practice that can excel an individual's level of emotional intelligence, that understanding of other people, has definitely got to be a good thing. Definitely got to be a good thing. And if faith-based values allows you to do that, then that's kind of 1-0 to faith. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay, then finally strategy number 4, which is about creating a purpose-driven culture. Okay. Yes, okay, that as well. So then we got to look at boundaries. But when your staff need you, people who have that kind of mindset, who they are likely to counsel employees, can counsel their staff when they need it, and sometimes it may be in the early hours. Okay, I've been known to reach out at that time. Okay, so creating a purpose-driven culture then. Obviously, making a profit is important for business. Okay, so we can't move away from that. Profit and or whatever success criteria an organization has. However, and I guess when we lead with faith, we build purpose-driven cultures that aren't just about the bottom line. They're also about aligning the company's vision or the mission of the company with what truly matters to your people, to your clients or service users, and ultimately to what the world actually needs too. So when you're looking outside of yourself, looking at a mission that can encompass all of that, there's a big difference. So as an example, Integrity Go Global, and there might be some indication in the name here, but Integrity Go Global is an international consultancy firm that embedded faith principles into their core mission, so emphasizing the importance of integrity and service. Now, this commitment has led to enhanced decision-making processes, and it's strengthened their reputation in the marketplace too. So just by embedding that into just the way that they do things, it's made a huge difference for their organization. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of thinking if we can. Okay, so this is a little reflect and share activity. So I'd like us to it's only going to take a short bit of time. So I'd like us to engage in a very quick reflection activity. And I'm looking at the time. So yeah, it's only going to be a quick one. So I'd like you to think about your current team or an organization that you're familiar with. So think about your current team or an organization that you're familiar with. And the question is, what are the key strengths of leadership? What are the key strengths of leadership? So thinking about your team or one that you're familiar with, what are the key strengths of leadership? And if you could just drop that in the chat for me. So when I'm thinking of some organizations, and one of the key strengths is that kind of ability to communicate openly. So I think that was definitely one. So communicating openly and honestly is definitely a key strength of leadership. And also holding people, to account. So asking people to take personal responsibility for their actions. Open and honest, compassionate communication. So we're on the same line here. Definitely, I think that is so important. But then think about how many organizations or situations when that doesn't happen, and kind of the knock-on effect for those people, and how employees suffer, or at a disadvantage when those things aren't happening. Okay, so open and honest, compassionate communication, articulating truth, and also holding people to account. Okay, so then the next question then is, well, how well do your leaders, in your opinion, embody faith-based principles like service, like integrity, and like resilience? So how well do your leaders embody faith-based principles like service, integrity, and resilience? So that's just kind of just thinking about the people that you've got. What do you think that looks like? So just drop your thoughts in the chat about that as well. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it in operation as well. So I do know your organization, definitely. And I just think that whole, what you said about giving people time, that whole love that you display, that is definitely something that flows throughout your organization, definitely. And I just think, when people are asking their staff to be responsible for their actions, I think, it's important that the leaders themselves embody the same principles that you're asking your staff to uphold to. So definitely. Okay, so now the last thing then is just a quick reflection is, where do you think improvements could be made? So looking at yourself, looking at staff, where do you think improvements could be made? So one of them may be not having a conversation at 3 in the morning unless you absolutely have to. But no, where do you think improvements could be made? If you've got any thoughts about that, please drop that in the chat as well. So where can faith-based leadership help you to lead your team to new heights of resilience or innovation? Yeah, to empower others to lead in the same way, definitely. I do love that whole leading by example, because I'm probably going to get the adage wrong, but they say, that leaders, if you turn around and there's nobody following you, then you're just having a walk. Because as leaders, people are looking up to you, people are following you, people are doing what you do, not just what you say. So empowering other people to lead by your example is definitely key. That's fantastic. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. And as you just reflect on the qualities that we've kind of thrown up, I just remember that the key to fostering faith-driven leadership is about consistent practice. Okay, it's not just about the skills that you teach, But as you've just kind of alluded to, it's about modeling those values and creating an environment where these principles actually thrive, where they're actually seen to thrive in your organization. So that's fantastic. Okay. And so just now, as we move into the long-term impact of faith-based leadership on your team, so what is the impact on you? I just want to share some key points or some key reminders. So I'm just going to ask you for your forgiveness that the slide is a little bit busy. So sorry that the slide's very busy. But here we go. So point number one, there's a lot of things in here. Okay, that everybody feels supported. That's important as well. And I think that goes back to what you were saying at the beginning. Not only do they feel valued, but actually people feel supported. They know they're not alone. If they need that support, they can approach and know that they're going to be listened to and get the help that they need. So definitely, I think they're definitely some key points. Definitely key points. Not judged. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, that is the big one. Actually, I know I'm smiling, but that's not a laughing matter. I think that's a really big point that if people do come forward, that whole atmosphere, that whole culture needs to be one where actually I can ask for help, I can reach out for support, and I don't get the sense that I'm being judged, but I'm being valued. So yeah, I think that's a really key one. Okay, so point number one, then we're talking about building a resilient and innovative team. So faith-based leaders are actually better equipped to help teams to navigate uncertainty because they have a higher level of emotional intelligence and trust. So we've talked about this. But this is the fact that they actually create or they encourage creativity, they empower their teams, and they cultivate resilience. So it's that whole thing that, they're able to kind of go, even though things are uncertain, even though things are challenging, there's just this faith that things will get better, it will be okay. And they're able to kind of dispel that and around their teams. I think that's really important. So there's an example here. There's an organisation which is the Centre for, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it may be exciting. Like that, uncertainty is the only certain thing. So it may be exciting, or you may want to find excitement in it, be able to find excitement in it. Okay, so the centre like that, the Centre for Justice and Peace Building, so known as the CJP, they embody faith-based leadership by equipping what they call their peace builders from across the globe with principles that are rooted in justice, compassion, and service. So leaders who are trained through CJP, they, including Nobel Prize winner Layman Gaboui, have demonstrated resilience and innovation in the face of extreme adversity, like ending Liberia's civil war through non-violent action. You see, faith-based leadership nurtures resilience by grounding teams in shared values. So when things kind of go wrong, when we need to kind of buckle down and keep going, by having, the team coming together on shared values actually enables them to kind of innovate even in times of crisis. We kind of club together, we are one mind, and we can work through this challenge, through this uncertainty together. So I think that's really important. Point number two is around employee engagement and retention. So a key outcome for faith-based leadership is improved employee engagement. So employees who feel valued and aligned with the company's mission are more likely to stay with the company and therefore contribute to its success. And we talked about that in the research. So an example then would be the Hershey Family Entertainment, and that's under CEO Joel Manby. Now, Manby is a Christian leader, and he implemented a lead with love philosophy across his organization. And through that philosophy, he wanted to emphasize respect, patience, kindness, and selflessness. So they were just kind of words which I think back up what Steph's been saying all the way through today around that, giving people time, that love, being supportive, not judging. So it's respect, patience, kindness, and a selflessness. Now, these values, when they worked together, created a culture where employees or staff, they felt valued, and supported. And that combination led to higher engagement, better morale, and lower turnover, which is massive for organisation. So when leadership is anchored in love and ethics, employees or staff are more likely to feel a sense of belonging, of loyalty, and long-term commitment. So according to the Centre for Faith and Work, 73% of employees working in faith-based environments report a higher level of job satisfaction and a greater sense of purpose. So that's kind of huge as well. And then the final point then around long-term organizational success. So ultimately, faith-driven leadership isn't about short-term strategy. And I think everything we've talked about is not something you can just do one day and not do it again. It is about long-term investment. So when you develop leaders who align with your organization's values, when you take the time to do that, when you put the effort in consistently, then they're the ones who create a sustainable culture that drives both business success and social good. So your success in your organization happens because of the behaviors of the people in your organization. So an example then would be Gamaliel Foundation. So their foundation is rooted in faith-inspired community organising. That's what they do. And they have built a long-lasting kind of impact. They do this by empowering leaders through grassroots advocacy and spiritual grounding. So that whole faith-based approach is integrated in how they do things. And their sustainable success across decades and multiple countries reflects the strength of actually having mission-driven leadership that stays committed to values over time. So that's my point about the long term. It's not about doing it today and then forgetting it tomorrow. It's how do you do this ongoingly, consistently, and that's what makes the difference. So faith-based organisations that lead with purpose and values actually experience enduring, so it continues, enduring influence and stability, even in complex and changing environments. So it's that longevity that makes a huge difference. So just a quick one, if unlocking greatness in your team starts with how you lead, are you ready to cultivate a culture where resilience and purpose thrive? So if unlocking greatness in your team starts with how you lead, are you ready to cultivate a culture where resilience and purpose thrives? So if you're interested in learning more about how to cultivate faith-based leadership in your team, or you'd like a deeper, more personalised assessment of your current leadership style, your impact, and your level of influence, then I'd love to support you. So what I'm doing is I'm offering a complimentary leadership impact and influence audit, where together we'll explore how you can closely align your leadership approach with your faith-driven mission to deliver great organisational results. So book your session today. I'm good at creating chaos to test their resilience. I think that's definitely your hallmark, but you do it with a smile. You do it with a smile. So if that's of interest to you, then book your session today. So just use the QR code on the screen or the link that's in the chat, and then you can just reserve a spot. So spaces are limited because we've also got bank holiday next week. So don't wait. Let's craft a strategy that makes your leadership both ethical and effective. Okay, so just because I'm aware of time, let's just quickly wrap up. So today we looked into how faith-based leadership offers immense potential for unlocking the best in your team. We've talked about that on so many different levels. When time and effort is put into developing leaders who are resilient, who are innovative, and who are deeply connected to a greater purpose or a greater sense of purpose outside of themselves, then you can create an organisation that not just thrives financially, but also ethically and socially. So what's your next step? So I want to encourage you to book a complimentary leadership audit to explore how faith-based leadership can be a positive enhancement for you and your team. So use the QR code or just check out the link that's in the chat. Okay. And so I just want to thank you. So don't despair. I've just got a couple of things. I just want to thank you for joining today's session. I trust that you're leaving with some actionable steps or some actionable insights as to how faith-based leadership can actually unlock the potential of your team, or just help you know that you're doing great stuff. I hope that we can find ways to continue the conversation on how we can inspire our teams with purpose and resilience. So feel free to share your reflections in the chat or reach out to me directly. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you took away from today, and also hear how you apply these strategies in your leadership journey. So just before we wrap up, one of the biggest challenges for leaders committed to ethical leadership is finding a community that truly shares their values. So this is why I created the Faith Inspired Leadership Lab membership group, which is a dedicated space full of resources to help you to connect with other purpose-driven leaders, to access exclusive resources on ethical leadership, and to engage in discussions on real-world leadership challenges. Interested in joining or want to learn more? Then just drop a yes in the chat or direct message me on LinkedIn so that I can let you know how you can get involved. So just drop a yes in the chat or direct message me, and I'll just let you know a little bit more about how you can get involved. Also, we'll be emailing out a worksheet from today's session, so do keep an eye out for that because it will be winging its way to you. And I'm happy to stay on just for a few minutes if you've got any final questions or you just want to have a quick hello. Okay, so I'll be sticking around. But until next time, keep leading with purpose, building with faith, and showing up with heart, because ethical leadership really does make a difference. So until next time, take care and God bless. So I'm going to just turn off the recording. Oh, if I can get recording. Do that. And let me just stop that share, and then let me turn off the recording. Should stop.